Alright, this is how to add a headlight that runs off the engine to a Honda XR80 or XR100. This one's a 2001. I believe they're pretty much the same from the 80s, sometime in the 80s all the way through to the late 2000s. Even the CRF 80s and 100s. That's how you can add it and do it cheap. So to begin with, you want to get this cover off and get to the magneto in there. I've already done it, so I'm just going to show you how I did it. Take it apart for you. Alright, so I've got the cover off. The next step is to take this flywheel off. You got to undo this 17mm bolt, which is easily done with an impact gun. Just like that. Now, to pull that flywheel off, you're going to need one of these here flywheel pulling tools. These are cheap, they're about 12 bucks off eBay. Probably the same price from Amazon if you're in the States. You could go ahead and make one if you wanted, but for the price, you might as well just buy one. And they work for a bunch of different Honda bikes, not just this one. So it's not like you can only use it on this bike. Point that out. Remember, it's a left-hand thread. You screw it in backwards. So it's snug. Wind that in. Hold on to that with something. Stop the engine spinning. Find something that's a nice tight fit on there. You don't want something loose. It's 17mm, but it's a bit tight. Just hold that and tap here. And there we go, flywheel is off. Of course, this is not just a flywheel, this is part of your alternator and magneto. Got magnets inside the drum there. Those are important. And in here, we have, focus, our stator, magneto stator. Now this coil here is the original coil, and all that does is provide the spark. That's what Honda put in. These are what I've added. When you open up this the first time, there's obviously nothing wound on there. You've got to wind these coils, and that's what this is all about. Now you can buy this piece from a company in the US that's already pre-wound. It costs about 150 bucks. You can do it much cheaper yourself. This copper wire I used is a bit light. You want to, if you're going to go and buy copper wire to do it, magnet wire, you want something like 18 American wire gauge, which is around about 1 square mil. This is something like 22, 23 maybe. It's just what I had lying around. Now with the 18, supposedly this will be good for about 100 watts. Since I'm only running one little LED that's about 6 watts, I wasn't too concerned about using lighter wire, but if you want to be able to run the full 100 watts, you want to use the heavier wire. Each one of these you wind 65 turns, and the most important part is each direction you wind has to be opposite from the one before it. So if you wind that one clockwise, that has to be anti-clockwise. And so on. Clockwise, anti-clockwise, clockwise, anti-clockwise, clockwise. Otherwise it won't work. They've got to be opposite to the one next to it. Now obviously you can pull this out. It makes it a whole lot easier. You can get these 2 screws here undone. They're a real pain. You need an impact, manual impact. I'll show you what that is. This is the impact driver you need. You got a Phillips bit in one end, they're interchangeable. Pick the one that's the best fit for the screw, put that in, and you smack the other end with a hammer. And it'll, you might have to do it a few times, they're real tight from factory. And you can see that I have unfortunately chewed mine up a little bit, which I'm not especially happy about, but unfortunately that's just what happened. You got to be careful too when you're smacking the end of that with a hammer, you don't miss and smash this, 'cause that would be very disappointing. Now before I pull it out, a few words on these wires. There's 4 wires in here from the factory. You've got one wire, these 2 pink wires not used. They're just some extra ones Honda put in there for us, and we are going to make use of them. The other 2 are, one is for this magneto coil, and the other one is for the pickup. Tell the little ignition module when to fire. So when you wind these, one end you can ground to one of these little stakes here, and I've soldered the end of it on. So it's just grounded to the frame of the engine and the motorbike. And the other end, I've added this little length of red wire. I've terminated it to another one of these stakes. You need to check these, because some of these are down to earth and some of them are not. So you can use one that's down to the earth or the ground of the bike to ground it, and use the one that is not as a connection point. And in that little red wire runs inside this little white braided wiring loom, I guess. And I've joined it to both of these pink wires. You can't see it because it's inside there, but basically these 2 pink wires, they come to about here and stop, and the same up in this black plastic sort of hosing or ducting. So it's easy to use them because they're going through this rubber plug. You just got to join them in there and join them up here, which is all I've done. It makes it quite... Okay, so I've just gone ahead and pulled this stator out just to give you a closer look. The windings. It's a bit awkward to wind. I didn't try it. You can probably undo these bolts and lift the plastic off this metal backing, which would make it a lot easier. You can see this one I wound first. It's nice and neat, and it all kind of went downhill from there. But it is functional, and that's what I was most concerned about. That's the pin that's earthed, and that's where power goes out into that woven wiring loom once again. One thing I should point out is that when you go and put this cover back on the side of the motor, you should really replace this gasket. I'm not going to do that right now because mine's in the mail. I don't have it yet, and I'll do it when I get it, but it's something worth doing, or at least put some gasket glue around the outside. Unless you get lucky and you take it off and your gasket comes off in one piece, which mine you can see did not. Okay, so once you've got your alternator windings done in here and it's all put back together, the next step is to wire it all up. This grey wire is joined to these 2 pink wires that come out that are our alternator wires. We've used both of them. You can use just one, I'm sure, for the light load we're going to be putting on it, but I used both because they were there. Somewhere inside this tubing, they're joined. I just soldered them together, put heat shrink around them. It comes out, connects here to the voltage regulator. You gotta have one of these because the voltage that comes out of our alternator is wild. It's not regulated. At idle it's about 11 volts AC, and when you rev it it'll go up to 40-50 volts, which is not what you want. So this little guy will turn it into DC for us and regulate it, hold it to around 12 or 13 volts. This one is from a Chinese pit bike, and that's what you really want. I'm using this particular one because I had it lying around, didn't cost me anything, but they cost about maybe 12 bucks, eBay, Amazon, whatever. The only thing is this particular one is a 5-wire one. You don't need 5 wires, get the 4-wire one, it's just a little bit easier. 5th wire for our purposes does nothing. I've just got it taped up. You get the 4-wire one, the price is the same, just makes your life a tiny bit easier. So the yellow wire is our AC input. The pink wire is the ground. That's grounded to the frame of the bike. I attached it to these couple of, you see that, black wires, and I just grounded them up here with this other factory ground up near the ignition coil and controller. I just used 2, you don't have to, I just used 2 because they were thin wires and I had them lying around. And then you have your DC output, which in this case is red and green wire. Now some of these regulators might allow you to also ground to the frame the negative. For some reason with this regulator it didn't work. I lost my output when I grounded that wire, so I've kept them both insulated from ground. They're just connected to some old speaker wire which runs up to my light up here. It's a very simple setup. I didn't bother with a switch. You could put a switch in if you wanted. I didn't bother. It just runs the whole time. It's no big deal to have it running the whole time. That part's up to you. If you want to switch, you can go ahead and put a switch in. This light is a cheap Chinese LED light. Works great. Very cheap. I bought a pack of 10 for about $48 Australian, so less than $5 each. They're supposedly, according to the seller, 30 watts or 18 watts. They're not. They run about 6 or 7 watts. I would be annoyed about that, except they were so cheap, and at 6 or 7 watts it still provides a very useful amount of light output. So I really don't give a damn. They're not what they say they are. And you know, this bike is not ever going to see a public road. This is just a farm bike. This light's more than sufficient for just riding around on the farm at night, which I don't do that much anyway, but now I can. If you wanted, you could also put in a tail light. You could go the whole hog and put in indicators. All I wanted was a headlight. One thing I have noticed is that the light is a little dull and flickery at idle. It brightens up once the revs come up a little bit. I don't know if that's the regulator not quite doing its job, or the windings just can't produce quite enough power at the low idle speed. Either way, I'm not too concerned about it. I'm pretty happy with the results. The light's more than adequate for riding around the farm at night, so I have no real desire to chase that issue. All in all, this project's cost me less than 20 bucks. It's because I was able to use a lot of stuff I had lying around, like the regulator. I had the coupler. I paid $11.50 I think for the tool to remove the flywheel, and the light was less than $5. Everything else, all the bits of wire and stuff I had lying around. But if you were to do this from scratch, if you had to go and buy all the stuff, I don't think it would cost you more than 50 bucks to do it. But all in all, I'm pretty happy with the results of the project, and I'll do it again.